on this episode of the Dripping in Black podcast.
So, what started the forefront radio for me was the vital question I asked. Who were we prior to slavery? Who were we prior to colonization? And what started my journey was I asked my grandfather, who's 100 years old, I said, Granddad, who were we before slavery? Who were we before we came to the island of Haiti? And he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, you're 100 years old, you don't know?
I'm 100, not 1,000.
You know what I'm saying? And then I asked my uncle, my uncle, he's a pastor. I said, Uncle, who were we before slavery? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. I asked my dad, I said, who were we before slavery? He's like, I don't know. So I'm like, no matter who I asked, there was no answer. Nobody could give me an answer.
Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis. And per usual, we have another fantastic guest who represents Black excellence in some realm across the world. Today's guest is Mr. Aphiel Israel. Aphiel, say hello to the world.
Hello, world. Peace and blessings to you all.
All right. And so Aphiel, aka Levi, is a podcast host as well. And I think this is probably the first time I've interviewed another podcast host. My producer could probably straighten me out on that, but I think that's the case. So we're going to talk a little bit about his podcast and his story, as you all know how we do. But we always like to begin by introducing our guests to our audience. And we ask a very simple, but not so simple question of who are they? So Aphiel Israel, who are you?
Thank you for asking that question. It's a great question. I was pondering over it, and I could honestly say confident yet humble advocate. I'm a strong advocate for my people. I absolutely love Black history, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the show.
Okay. So Levi, how old are you?
36 years old.
Okay, 36 years old. And where are we broadcasting you from? What part of the globe?
So I'm currently in San Antonio, Texas, originally from Miami, Florida.
Okay. Miami, Florida, born and raised?
Yes, sir. Carroll City, 305 all day.
Okay. Give some shout outs to your schools. Where did you attend school?
Education wise, went to Parkview Elementary, had an awesome teacher there. Went to Parkway Middle. That's also in the Carroll City area. Lived in North Carolina for a year. And I don't recall the name of the school, but when I came back to Florida, I went to Barbara Coleman Senior High. And it was an interesting dynamic there because at that time, the school was trying to set up kind of an integration system between the Hispanic population and the African-American population. So I was one of the first actually students on two busloads of Black kids traveling into the Spanish side of town and kind of interacting. So it was pretty good, interesting experience.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine that's another podcast right there.
Oh yeah. I could tell you some stories.
All right. So Miami, born and raised, dipped over to North Carolina. And now you're working as a radio host, right, for the Forefront. Let's talk about that. What is the Forefront?
So what started the Forefront radio for me was the vital question I asked. Who were we prior to slavery? Who were we prior to colonization? And what started my journey was I asked my grandfather, who's 100 years old, I said, Granddad, who were we before slavery? Who were we before we came to the island of Haiti? And he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, you're 100 years old, you don't know
I'm
that?
100, not 1,000.
You know what I'm saying? And then I asked my uncle, my uncle, he's a pastor. I said, Uncle, who were we before slavery? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. I asked my dad, I said, who were we before slavery? He's like, I don't know. So I'm like, no matter who I asked, there was no answer. Nobody could give me an answer. And then I came across this Bible verse that I want to touch on real quick. It's in the book of Job, chapter 8, verse 8. It says, for inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. So what that means is we have to acknowledge our past, because if we don't know where we come from, we're not going to know where we're going. So that's what started my journey into investigating who were we before slavery, before colonization, what was our cultural habits, what we used to eat, what we used to wear, how we conducted ourselves. And the only place I could find it was in this history book known as the Bible. And notice I said history book and not religious book. And we'll get into that in a moment.
Okay. So when did this question first pop into your head, age-wise? Can you nail it down to age?
2009 was when I first started like going through my spiritual journey, trying to find out God and navigate through the difference between religion and spirituality, being spiritual in the biblical sense versus what modern day religion has taught us, you know what I mean? And then 2013 was when I started like really digging deep into history books and the Bible. And I said, hold up, I'm reading about Egypt. Wait, Egypt is in Africa. I'm reading about the children of Israel being compared to the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians are black. I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. There's something off here. Because we've been taught all our life, right, that the Bible is a book of a European persuasion. But I start reading it, I'm finding out, hold up, wait a minute. Moses is black. He was married to an Ethiopian woman who's a black sister. His sister Miriam was black. Jesus Christ is described in the Bible, which we're going to get into later on. King Solomon, one of the greatest black men on the planet, okay, all described as black, people of color. You know what I'm saying? And I read it, and we're going to go over some brief verses. And when I read it, I'm going to ask you, get a white boy out of
that. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. I want to talk a little bit more about the Forefront Radio. So what is it? So how do I find it? What is it? Is it on the radio, or, that's the question. What is the Forefront Radio?
Okay, so the Forefront Radio basically goes into the history of the diaspora of Blacks. We talk about the history of the Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. You can find the Forefront Radio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We started the Forefront Radio in 2020 before the pandemic. And once the pandemic came around, it just was more motivation to start it off. And in the month of October, I started coming across the co-host that you have and the producer, Sean, as well as other people that were doing a content creators of color collective. And we took the time to make 30 days of nothing but content. And if you go back and look at it, in 30 days, we came up with about 141 episodes. I did about 31 episodes out of those, and I break down Black history, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. We also talk about like the dynamics of how we forgot our identity and our culture, and how slavery is actually mentioned in the Bible, and the people of the Bible are described as far as their color, what they used to eat, being brought on slave ships, forgetting their identity. All this is literally in the Bible.
Mhm. Yeah. So the Forefront Radio podcast you can find in most popular podcast locations. And you tap into Black history specifically with the leaning towards the biblical perspective. All right.
Mhm.
So why the name Forefront? What's the significance of that?
The significance of Forefront is kind of like saying that you're at the vanguard or at the beginning stages. If you notice, this is a particular niche that's not really covered at all. It's
Yeah.
not covered in colleges and universities. It's not covered in churches. It's not covered in a lot of different backgrounds all across the planet. There seems to be an agenda to prevent Black folks from knowing their true cultural identity. Okay.
Yeah.
They don't care if you say that you're Muslim. They don't care if they say that you're Christian. But as soon as you read the Bible and you say, you know what? I'm reading about my ancestors in this book, they say, "Oh no, no, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 media cover up. Don't say it. Don't say it at all."
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Nick Cannon, right? He had an interview, if you remember, he had an interview with Professor Griff, and in that interview, when he was talking to Professor Griff, he told him straight. He was like, "Hey, we God's chosen people." Straight up. Man, they took that thing off the air. Viacom like messed up his money, all of that. Even Ice Cube, right? Ice Cube was on the internet
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, man, we God's chosen people. I'm reading this book. It ain't what it ain't what people say it is. It ain't about white folks. It's about us." Man, he was all
Mhm.
on Twitter, all on Instagram posting that thing. And everybody was like, let's ban Ice Cube. Let's not put his information out there anymore. They was going
Mhm.
crazy. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm talking celebrities, football players, entertainers, all these different people are saying the same thing. And
Mhm.
people are just like sleep at the wheel.
Mhm. Yeah, it's man, this is a heavy topic because when I think about our people, I think in this day and age, the biggest challenges is helping us to be aware of our own role in these things. So as a history teacher, the challenge of getting students just to simply read, right?
Right,
And
right.
value reading, right? I mean, I don't know how you learn anything if you're not reading. I don't know how you arrive at your own understanding without reading. And so when I do teach history, American history, Black history, whatever, I always talk about how when we were enslaved, they, you know, they systematically kept us from reading. There was a consequence for reading,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And now we are not in that slave system, right? We are quote unquote free. However, we choose not to read, right? So it's us kind of doing it to ourselves. So all of that's a long-winded way to get to this point. What's the challenge you face in educating your own people about this? What are some challenges you face in that regard?
The challenge I face is making the Bible palatable for our people and trying to show it in a way where they don't see it as just religious content, but actually Black history. Okay. It's literally Black history in the Bible. And think about it like this. When Moses was on Mount Sinai, right, with our ancestors, okay, he didn't give us Baptists, he didn't give us Episcopalian, Catholic, none of that stuff. He literally gave us rules, regulations of how to conduct themselves, because any kingdom on the earth has rules and regulation, a system of government. Okay. So when I read in the Bible, I read this verse, Job chapter 30, verse 30. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burnt with heat. So then what do they call us here in America? Black, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm reading this. I'm like, hold up. Job, one of our ancestors, is describing himself, his complexion, his skin tone as Black, just like they describe us today. Okay. But there's no country called Black. There's no place where I could say, let me get a plane ticket and let me fly to Black. It don't exist. You see what I'm saying? So who are we according to the Bible? And you know what's interesting, because you're a history buff too. Why is it that the only history that we're limited to is 1619, the transatlantic slave trade, and then stories about like Rosa Parks, MLK, you know, the civil rights movement. Hold up, wait. Did Black folks exist prior to coming over here? Yes, they did. Did Black folks exist in the 1400s, in the 1500s? How about during the time of Christ? You see what I'm saying? So those answers and more are what we research and discuss on the Forefront Radio. We go in deep, and I mean deep.
Another question would be, did Caucasians exist?
Yes, they do.
During the time of Christ.
They did, and they're the Romans. And the funny thing about it, they were the ones, the quote-unquote Romans, that literally crucified the Black Messiah, hung him, basically crucified him through the method of execution on a tree, hanging him, just like they do over here. Nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun. So when I was mentioning earlier about Moses, right? Think about this. Moses, right? He was talking to our ancestors, the children of Israel, and he said to them this: if we listen to God and follow his rules and regulations as a nation of people, we will be the top ruling nation on the earth, meaning leadership, rulership. That's what that was our divine purpose. We were not created to be Negroes or at the bottom of society. We were literally created to be kings and priests of the earth. Think about it. When we talk about Jesus Christ, he is called the King of Kings. Kings. So who are the kings? Who are the of kings that it's talking about? Us. Us. Watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 6. It says this. It says, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above, key point, watch this, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So now there's no equality in that. Who's the best at singing? When you go to the national anthem, right? Who would they rather have? Aretha Franklin, Beyonce, or name a Caucasian singer? I can't even think of it. I can't even think of it.
What is it? What's Estelle?
Dolly Parton. Let's say Dolly Parton, right?
Oh no, Dolly Parton ain't on that level.
Exactly. Who sing better? Who's the best at sports?
Ain't nobody checking with Dolly Parton.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So think about it. Who's the best at singing? Who's the best at entertainment, music, science? Right? We are. Why is we the head of every trend that's going on? Because we are literally God's chosen people. We the salt of the earth.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to think of Adele. I'm messing the name up. I'm talking about Estelle, but yes, Adele. So that's what I came up with. But okay, so I guess my question is, the Bible, you know, for all of my lifetime has been taught as a spiritual book. In my life, it has impacted my spiritual walk. And you talk about it as a history book.
Correct.
So my question is, why is that important? Why is it important to, I guess, almost like change the perspective of the Bible from what is perceived as a spiritual book to this historical book? Why is that so valuable to you, to what the work that you're doing?
Here's why it's important. What modern religion has done, is completely rip out the Old Testament and say, don't read that. They completely ripped out this book right here called the Apocrypha, which was
Mm,
part of the original 1611 Bible. Okay.
mm,
And they said, to hell with that. We don't want that. You can't
mm,
understand the New Testament without getting the historical references and the context of the people. Who were they? Who are these quote unquote lost tribes? Who are these individuals,
mm,
right? And even
mm,
Jesus the Christ, the Black Messiah, said this in the book of John, chapter 8, verse 32. He says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So now my question is, if Christ himself said no, we would know the truth, that would mean that right now on this earth, the majority of believers on the planet are living a lie. They
mm,
don't know the truth, because if they knew the truth that Christ was a Black man, that the children of Israel was prophesied in the Bible to go into slavery, that we were the ones with Moses on Mount Sinai having the covenant, then we would get it right. We would say we need to fix what our ancestors got wrong. Watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. I'm gonna keep it real short and to the point. Watch this. It says this, but it shall come to pass, meaning it will happen in the future, if thou will not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So now a curse, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
uh, sounds like a bad thing to me.
Obviously, if somebody cuss you out, it don't feel good. It's bad.
Mhm,
So God literally cussed us out as a nation of people and said, look, if you listen to me, I'm going to make you the top ruling nation on the earth. But us as Black folks, we hard-headed, we stiff-necked, we stubborn, you know what I'm saying?
mhm,
Stubborn than an ox in the ass. We don't want to do what the Most High said. Therefore, generational curses fell upon us as a race, as a nation of people. I'm going to give you an example
mhm,
of a sign that indicates us being the children of Israel. Watch this. In the same chapter, Deuteronomy 28, verse 48, it says this: therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he, referring to that same enemy, not your friend, shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So now think about it. During slavery, did we
mhm,
not serve those that did not have our best interests at heart? Yes, we did. During slavery, did we serve? Did we serve for food, water, clothing, and everything we needed? Yes, we did. And you can actually do a Google search on this now. When you do a Google search and type yokes of iron upon thy neck, the first thing that pops up is, guess what? A picture of a Black man in chains with chains around his neck. We're literally reading a sign in the Bible of generational curses. Now, remember, when we go to church, right, folks be like, oh, we've got to break the generational curse, break the generational curse. But they never specify what those curses are.
mhm,
Now we're reading what those generational curses are, and we're given the clues of how to break those generational curses. Now, here's another sign to indicate that we're the children of Israel. Think about it today, right? Even to this day, this generational curse still applies. I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to compare it to today. It says, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger. So when we want food, the
mhm,
majority of the food chains, the restaurants, the grocery stores, and the corporations, do we own that, or do the same people that enslaved us, oppressed us till this day own these things? Now, when it comes to
mhm,
thirst, Aquasani, I'm sorry, Aquafina, Dasani. What's another popular water brand? Fiji water,
smart
water, right? The
Mm.
CEOs, are they blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans? No. Okay. When it comes to clothing, the textile companies, right? Who owns the manufacturing and textiles? Your Gucci, your Fendi, your Prada, your Louis Vuitton. It belongs to, I'm going to read it again. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee. So God said, because we didn't want to listen to him and serve him, a sign that would indicate who the lost tribes of Israel are is that they would serve their enemy for food, water, clothing, and the wants of all things. Now think about it, Dave.
Okay.
Toilet tissue. Do black folks got a corporation of toilet tissue?
No, but I got the point you're making, and I want to kind of move this along a little bit.
Good.
I
wanted
think
to
you're
make sure I
doing a
was
fantastic
thorough.
job to our audience, displaying what they find on the forefront media.
Mhm.
All right, and so, but I want to get back to you. So this obviously is a tremendous work, a passionate work that you're doing,
Mhm.
right? And you talked about asking your people around you, from your grandfather to your uncle,
Mhm.
that question about who were we before slavery,
Mhm.
and it looks like you found the answer in the Bible.
That's right.
Right. All right. So, what's the broader message that you want to go out to the world? So we're broadcasting across the world. What's the
Mhm.
broader message that you want the
Okay.
world to know based on what you've learned thus far?
Okay. Based on what I've learned thus far, the goal is to remove the brainwashing that has been done on the Black diaspora. The Blacks, Hispanics,
Okay.
and Native Americans have been deceived to worship a European construct that happened during slavery. And now, in these days, we have to remove white supremacy from the mind and now follow the true way of following Christ. How do we do so?
Mhm.
Christ is not a Caucasian man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He's written of in Revelation chapter 1, verse 14, of having woolly hair and feet so dark it looked like it burned in a furnace. That's a Negro. So Jesus
Yeah.
himself said, right, that there would be false Christ and false prophets. So
Yeah.
obviously, in order to discern the false from the true, you have to start re-examining the Bible. You have to start
Mhm.
asking yourself questions like, okay, if I'm reading in the Bible that Jesus Christ is a Jew, which is the term which is derived from the term Judah, right? And I'm reading in the Bible literally that Jesus Christ is a black man. Now what about his mama? What about his daddy? What about his brothers and sisters? What about his tribe? You see
Mhm.
what I'm saying? So now watch
Mhm.
this. For the Forefront Radio, we go over very simple, basic things. We read a Bible verse and we compare it with history. I'll give you an example. In Jeremiah 14, verse 2, it says this: Judah mourneth. We're talking about the tribe of Judah, the same tribe that
Mhm.
Jesus Christ came from. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black, they are black, they are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. So now I read that verse to my uncle, who's a pastor, right? And I
Mhm.
said, Uncle, I'm reading right here that Jesus Christ is a black man and his tribe is black. That hold up, that's talking about us. You know what this man
Mhm.
said to me? He said, my son, pray. I said, oh hell. I'm like, what? You are wait. I'm literally reading that we're in this book and our people have not been told their entire life. We go to schools, universities, we learn history, and we're limited. And they
Mhm.
say, you want to hide something from a Negro, put it in a book, because we don't like to read no more
Yeah.
from slavery.
So these challenges exist, right? This is the reality. You talk to somebody you could talk to, have a real conversation with. You're exposing them to what you've learned, and yet you're being met with go somewhere and pray. All
Yeah.
right. So with this great challenge, and I like to always do this to forecast. This is a great work that you're doing with the Forefront Radio, right? You're really trying to undo a brainwashing, right? You're trying to undo a brainwashing of thousands of years. So you are here now. How would you say you've been doing this since 2020, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're going on 2 years of doing this. How would you say it's going so far in terms of your mission? If you had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. I'm making the impact I want to be making. And 1 is like, I suck. Where would you be on that scale from 1 to 10 in terms of your mission?
As far as mission, I would say 7 and always increasing, because we always need laborers that are willing to research this information, and just being available for platforms like Dripping in Black, content creators of color, and other platforms where we can talk about these things, and have a safe space to discuss it and open it up to people. It's a great way for us to grow and excel as a nation of people, because this for me is like winning the lotto. Okay, gaining an inheritance. Great. This is like the greatest information that you can obtain in your life as a Black person, as a Latino person. You know what I'm saying? Because they've literally spent trillions of dollars preventing us from knowing. They say, "Oh, you just Africa." That's a continent. There's 54 countries. So we're in Africa. Guess what? Northeast Africa, Jerusalem. So as far as the growth, I would say the growth is getting up there, but it can always get better and better by people having a shared interest. So far, I actually looked at the stats for this year. I have almost 12,900 subscribers on YouTube. The Spotify page, the amount of listenership increased by 148% this year. I'm trying to run off numbers off of my head. So it's steadily growing and increasing, And for me, my mission is to awaken the 12 tribes, awaken our people to the true history, and remove the system of white supremacy and oppression that's within our mind. Because think about it. This information alone, it could stop Black on Black crime. Because then we could say, look, that brother that I'm looking at, he is a son of God. He ain't no regular Joe. He is special. He's different. You see what I'm saying? It would remove the baby mama, baby daddy stuff, because we would have responsible men taking care of their families and responsible women that adore and reverence their husbands. All these different principles, like loving your neighbor as yourself, can fix the Black community. You see what I'm saying? So that's my mission, and I pray that we can.
I want to jump in. One of the questions I ask is, and I like people that are doing the work to kind of think of this for a couple of reasons. It's kind of like the goal that's out there for them, but also for somebody that's maybe watching and trying to aspire to do something similar, they can get a little game from it, right? So you're at a 7. Let's say you want to get to beyond a 10, you want to get to a 15. And that 15, you got into the description of what that looks like already. You kind of told me. What steps would entail you getting from the 7 to the 15, where white supremacy has been wiped out? The average walking Black person knows their worth, right? Knows that we are not niggas, right? But we are from kings and queens. What steps are going to help you get from where you are to that height? What are some
here's what's
steps?
there's actually, I'm glad you asked that, because there's two biblical principles that I'll touch on that actually touch on that point. In Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 1, it says this: gather yourselves together, O nation not desired. So we as a nation of people have to understand the importance of unity, unity. That right
Yeah.
there is like a kryptonite for black folk, because one wants to be Muslim, one wants to be Christian, one wants to be, no, to hell with all of that. The Arabs had us enslaved. That ain't for us. The white folks had us enslaved. Modern Christianity ain't for us. The true biblical principles are for us to have faith in the black Messiah and keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Bible. That's how we unify. We have to put away Democrat versus Republican. We have to put away, all these different ideologies and philosophies that keep us away from obedience to God, keep us away from loving one another as brothers. That's what we need to do. That's point number one. Point number two, in Revelation chapter 18, verse 4, it says this: and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. So God is saying, now is the time for us as a nation of people to come out of the brainwashing of white supremacist system in America and throughout the world. And if 2020 and 2021 didn't teach us, right now we're going through a period of time where there's some plagues on the earth, mosquito bites, if you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So right now is the time for us to unify, and the only way we can do that is if we unite under one banner, and that's Jesus the Christ, the Black Messiah.
Okay. All right. So we have an
heavy,
audience
man.
here, Dripping in Black. Oh yeah, it's heavy. It's quite the challenge, I think. But the work is you have begun the work, right? You have begun the work. You're on your way. We have an audience here. What are some ways they can support you in reaching that ultimate goal? Just kind of talk to our audience. What are some things that they could provide for you?
Well, we appreciate everyone that tunes into the radio show and does research on who are we according to the Bible. You can find us on social media platforms. We're on Instagram as The Forefront Express. We're also on Facebook as The Forefront Media. Type a Google search or look on your Apple Podcast, type The Forefront Radio, and you'll be able to tune in and see what we have available. As well, if you want to provide some financial support for more books on research, study materials, gaining more things like access to video recording and stuff like that. We want to start transitioning from a audio-based platform to a video-based platform. So anyone that wants to, show some support in that way, we can always, use that help. But my overall goal is to get our people to wake up.
Yeah. And I think that's what drew me into education in general. I'm teaching at schools that are predominantly Black kids for a reason.
Nice.
I could teach anywhere, but I'm teaching there, and I have my entire career for that reason. But it is a great challenge, and we just got to keep plugging away at it. So we appreciate you for coming on and telling your story. There's much more there for us to kind of discuss, and we will go on and on and on.
Right.
But we have to get to the most important question that we ask each and every one of our guests to kind of close out the episode. And you ready for that?
Yeah, sure.
So the most important question that we asked is, have you ever been on the cover of a magazine?
Have I ever been on the cover of a magazine? No, sir, I have not. I have not been on the cover of a magazine.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the things we try to do here is we aim to please. So my producer is going to pull up, your very first magazine cover. You have made it to the cover of the Dripping in Black magazine.
Okay.
And
Cooking with fire there.
there you are, Mr. Aphiel Israel. So somebody's been slipping because that's a pretty dope cover.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so that is also your parting gift. We will get that out to you at a later date, get it printed out and laminated and all that good stuff.
All right,
but that's a
appreciate
thank you
that.
from us to you for coming out and talking with us, educating us, and sharing your story. All right.
Yes, thank you. And since you're a history buff, just a couple of books I would reference for you to research if you like. There's a book called From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Windsor, a great book to look into. There's another book called History of the Jews by John Allen, I believe the author is. So those are two good books to look into if you like.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. We will put that into our video portion as well. And people will be able to check into that. And I will definitely look into those as well. All right. Give one more time your social media where people can find you. So make sure they get that.
Definitely. So Instagram would be The Forefront Express. My website is theforefrontexpress.com. My Facebook page is The Forefront Media, and you can find me on anchor.fm/The Forefront, or if you have Google or Apple Podcasts on your phone, just type The Forefront Radio, and you should be able to pull it up.
I understand that you're a musician as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I read a lot of stuff about you. You sent in information we asked for. I didn't see that anywhere, but my producer happens to know that. So we will kind of transition playing some of your music so the audience can get a little taste of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. It's on soundcloud.com. Just type The Forefront and you'll be able to find my music on SoundCloud.
Never live in sin, bruh, cause you die suddenly. When I learn the truth, I got myself together. Examine myself through this stormy weather. Sirach chapter 2, constantly endure. Overcome temptations, live your life pure. Be strong in the Lord when you live in a lower state. Take cheerfully, put a smile upon your face. Understand His grace, periods to flee the evils of this wicked place. Truth in the Bible ain't a game. Spirit of truth, fire and the flame. Give me the strength like umbrellas in the rain. Give me the strength like we breaking all these chains. Give me the strength all through all this pain.
Please take care of you. Want to take care of mine and keep you close.
On the next episode of the Dripping in Black podcast.
Jen Washington from the Woke by Accident podcast.
What is Woke by Accident?
Yeah, so Woke by Accident is a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. And so here it is my outlet to give a voice to the voiceless. And I cover stories of social justice, missing persons, and I also have lately had a lot of interesting authors and podcasters on to share their story, or some life coaches, and just really wanted to the core about social justice really is the inspiration.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.